Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Tiffany. Hello. Now, I hope you're all keeping well. I hope you're remaining positive during these challenging times. Today, I wanted to share a 3 mindset shift that helped me save 12k a year whilst I was on a 26k salary. Now, because I spoke about frugality last week, I realized that it was worth a follow-up, but from a slightly different angle. Now, I think a lot of us do have a warped view of money. We can on one end think money is evil, it's the root of all evil. And on the other end, we can become absolutely obsessed with money and think I want more and more and more, and you do anything to get it. For me personally, I've had to go on a conscious journey to understand what money really means, what role it plays. And I'm now at the stage where I do think money is a powerful resource. It's not everything, but it is important because it's an extension of our kindness, of our hearts. Imagine if someone came to you, they were hungry, you could pray for them. Yes, you should pray for them. But at the same time, imagine if you could give them some money to actually buy some food as well. Imagine how powerful that would be. So for me, I might have mentioned this before as well to give some context. 5 years ago, I quit my job. I was at a stage where I was very unfulfilled. I knew that I wanted more out of life. I wanted to express myself in a different way. And having a pot of savings was what gave me the freedom of choice to make the next best move, which was quit my job, go backpacking for 3 months, and then come back and start a business. And 5 years later, I am still running that business, but I now have 2 businesses. One is in recruitment, and the other one is buying and selling clothes. And together, I think they're both an extension of my interests, my skills, and overall, I am leading a much more intentional and happy life. Now, before I also get into the 3 mindset shifts, it's worth saying that I do have a slight advantage in that I grew up with a penny conscious, frugal, penny counting sort of dad, a traditional, typical Nigerian dad. It will give you a shopping list, it would say 54p for bread, £1.72 for rice, and it'll be like, you better bring back my receipt. So when you grow up in that sort of environment, I think it does shape your approach to money. So the 3 mindset shift. Number 1 is living below my means. Now, my dad always says, cut your coat according to your cloth, which is cut your coat according to your cloth. And I always thought, so you're telling me if I have this much material, I should just make a coat out of it? But actually, what that really means is don't try to keep up with the Joneses. I think we live in a world now where, appearance is important, but sometimes we do get carried away in the sense that we want to keep up with everyone online. We want to look like we have more than we actually do have. And we make those decisions at the expense of our kind of other priorities. If you can't afford to go to a fancy bar, to a fancy restaurant, then why are you stretching yourself to do that just because everybody else is? So, I was at a stage in my life a couple of years ago where I had these friends who, for example, they lived at home, so they had slightly different financial responsibilities to me. And at times they would say, oh, let's go to this really nice bar, let's go to a nice restaurant. So it got to the stage where I actually had to learn to start to say no. I had to learn to decline those invites and be like, listen, they have less to pay in terms of their priorities, in terms of their rent, but I had a much more price to pay. So I had to be careful to make sure that I was not simply having a champagne lifestyle and a lemonade budget. So it got to a stage where I just had to learn to say no and be like, okay, that's not my priority. Paying £12 for a cocktail is not my priority. I can't even afford to do that. So I need to make sure that I'm living below my means. That way I'm able to actually save some money. I'm able to pay my rent, and at the end of the month, still be quite comfortable to have enough to live. So it's all about having limits, really, living below your means. Now, number 2, mindset shift is mentally detached from the belief that I can spend my way to happiness. Now, I think, don't get me wrong, I'm not averse to making kind of the one-off expensive purchase of maybe a designer bag, or I do like a Chanel brooch as well, I'm not going to lie. But I think you have to be careful to manage your expectations on what that really means. A new bag, a new pair of shoes, it's not going to make you happy. It might do temporarily, but in the long term, you're going to be back to how you feel. So, we all have our issues at the end of the day. Some of us have, a lot of guilt. We might have shame. Some of us might have, trauma from our childhood. We might not be, might be struggling to forgive ourselves. And we simply have to learn to not use emotional spending as some form of therapy. It's important to find effective ways to be a better person, to let go of your demons. rather than thinking you can spend your way to happiness, you can spend your way to joy. You know, more stuff does not equal more joy. So if you are having issues, then you're better off finding a much more effective, you know, form of therapy, form of counseling. You can take on exercise, you can begin to work on yourself, you can speak to someone that you trust. There are other ways to meet that gap rather than trying to buy your way to joy. And I think once you begin to do that, then buying things or owning things, you can put them into perspective. So for example, you can buy something, but your expectations, you're managing expectations as to what it can provide you. And the third mindset shift is practicing delayed gratification. Now, the way I see delayed gratification is that it's the ability to give up what you want now for what you want most. That was a quote by American scholar Neil Maxwell. Now, I think delayed gratification also is the ability that you can actually give up your temporary pleasure. You can give up your temporary need to, kind of enjoy everything now, so that you can save something further down the line. You guys might know of this interesting research, as well, Stanford research, which is called the marshmallow test, where 4 to 6-year-olds were offered the opportunity to have a marshmallow now, or have 2 or 3 if you wait for 15 minutes. And they actually tracked those children for 40 years, up until they were adults. And they realized that the children that were more likely to practice delayed gratification were much more likelihood of being successful further down the line. They were able to have much more success in terms of better social skills, and also less maybe substance abuse, for example. And I think that says a lot about delayed gratification, is the ability to think, when it comes to your financial decisions, the way I see it is make a decision now that your older self would appreciate, because there's an older person in all of us. There's a 60, 70, 80-year-old that will one day bear the brunt of the decisions you make now. So just make sure that you're not putting yourself in a vulnerable position down the line, and just decide, be able to give up your temporary pleasure and think, with 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years time, what decisions am I making today that I would actually be grateful for at that stage? And that's it really. I thought those 3 mindset shifts will be useful to you guys. Now, if anybody is struggling with their finances and you can relate to this video, then maybe I need to introduce you to my dad. My dad can give you a 30-minute lecture, tell you to cut your coat according to your cloth, and you'll be converted. But in all seriousness though, I think, financial understanding, financial acumen it's very important. It's not something we should ignore, because it's a vital aspect of our life. And the key thing is really to assess where you are and think, okay, where do I want to be in 5 years and 10 years time? And then begin to take decisions that actually are aligned with your goals. And it all starts with starting small. So yeah, thanks guys for joining me on this one. And always remember that life rewards those who live intentionally. See you next time.